It's the Underpowered Hour. On this week's show, Happy World Land Rover Day. JLR is celebrating by dropping the Land Rover name, or are they? An all-new Defender 130 that only seats 5, workshop updates, and other news. And now, here's the show. Welcome to the Underpowered Hour. I'm Steve Barris, mild-mannered television executive by day and Land Rover collector by night. You can find out more about our cars and what we're working on at thebarriscollection.com or follow us on Instagram at thebarriscollection. I'm joined, as always, by my good friend, Ike Goss.
Thank you to everyone joining us today. I'm the Land Rover to Steven's JLR. I'm the obsolete vehicle of podcasting, Ike Goss. I own and operate Pangle and 4x4 in Springfield, Oregon, where we live and breathe Land Rovers. Check us out online on Facebook, Instagram at Pangle and 4x4. Let's get started.
All right, Ike. Well, we're back at it. Lots of interesting Land Rover. Don't call it Land Rover news, maybe?
This is the most popular JLR podcast on the internet.
Get all your JLR news here first. Yeah. You know what? I thought there was a heavy equipment manufacturer already called JLR, which there was going to be some conflict. I mean, I don't know. It appears as though the internal CEO, temporary gentleman, may have spoken slightly out of turn in saying that they were not going to use the Land Rover name anymore. It looks like maybe they're backing that back.
There's some debate about what's happening there, right? So there was for those of you that don't know, there was an interview with some of the JLR, dare I say.
I think you're allowed to say JLR. I think that's
head of design and CEO. And they interviewed several people in the company.
Yeah.
And the impression that they gave was that the company itself would be renamed JLR, which it's often referred to anyway, right?
Yeah.
It's referred to as JLR.
That makes sense.
It is. So I think that a lot of news organizations read into that and said, they're dropping the Land Rover name. Right. And in addition, in those interviews, they were saying, well, you know, JLR is a house of brands. And so instead of having the very confusing Land Rover, Range Rover, which I've had that conversation with people before, they're a little confused about is Range Rover a Land Rover? Like, how does that work? It is a little confusing. So,
absolutely,
you know, they said, okay, we're going to have Defender as its own brand, Range Rover as its own brand, Discovery as its own brand, Jaguar as its own brand. And then JLR is the, overarching organization. So a lot of these news organizations, they read into that and they said, they're dropping the Land Rover name, which is kind of what it sounds like they're doing. They're renaming the company JLR, and then it's not going to be a Land Rover Range Rover. It's just a Range Rover, right? So people lost their minds. Like all these auto organizations, these press organizations, Car and Driver and Auto Blog and all these people, they produced articles saying that the Land Rover nameplate is going away.
That's it. Yeah.
And people went insane. They
did go insane. Yeah, they did go insane.
The internet was awash.
It was awash with no more Land Rover. With, equal parts of angry and dismayed and sad with inquiries to their local Land Rover dealerships if they can buy the sign.
Yeah,
I believe chatting with a couple of Land Rover dealers around here, we got the feedback that. There's already been several inquiries about the sign.
There's already been several inquiries about the signs. Yeah. So, people were like, they're getting rid of the Land Rover name. I'm going to buy that sign for my garage. But exactly. It was interesting. People's reactions were, how could you do that? Land Rover's been around for so long, like the normal, sort of hand wringing from enthusiasts of the brand. They're like, they grew up loving this thing and then now it's gone, seemingly.
Yeah. Well, like an AMC gremlin, never to be seen again.
Yeah, and so some of the phrases that they used in the interviews were things like the Land Rover name is going to be a trust mark. Like we're still going to use it, but it's going to be this trust mark.
Is that the thing that's on the belly of a Care Bear? I believe that's what they call that, right?
I think so.
Right.
It's like the Xavier Roberts tag on a Cabbage Patch doll.
Exactly.
So nobody was really sure because trustmark is not really a word, right? Like it's not a trademark. Like, what is that? Like nobody knew what that meant. And so, in combination with the other things, at any rate, it muddied the waters. People were like very confused about what was happening. They're like, is it still going to be on the vehicles? Is it not? The organization's JLR, like what are they doing? And one of the quotes from the interview, which was one from our friend Mr. Jerry McGovern, was, with a luxury brand, you need absolute clarity. And so I think no one knew what any of this meant for the company or their favorite brand. Yeah. But I think a lot of people thought, these news organizations included, enthusiasts and so forth, they thought that their favorite trademark, their favorite brand was being dropped. And so I think that's what ended up happening. So absolute clarity may have been warranted, but it certainly wasn't achieved.
The goal was to clarify, and in fact, it so much worse.
And so the next day, they released a statement that was like, whoa, we're not getting rid of the name. You read too much into this. We're still going to be using it in roughly the same way that they've always been using it. They're going to put it on the vehicles and like blah, blah, blah. So I don't know that any more clarity has been achieved either. Like, what is that? What is it exactly that you're doing? Is this a rebranding exercise where you're trying to put more emphasis on certain things? Nobody knows. So I think that we can all agree Land Rover, Range Rover was more clear than what's happening now.
Absolutely. Yes. I think it would be much better if everybody just said Land Rover, Range Rover at this point, because now it is absolutely out the window. Leave it to good old Jerry McGovern to take what is a fairly simple and obvious answer and complicate it to a degree where you can't remember what the question was anymore.
I don't really know what happened. No one knows what a trustmark is. No one knows what's happening with the brand. But maybe we'll get some clarity in the future.
They're going to put some billions in, apparently, as part of that, which really definitely 15. Got buried in the 15 of those billions of pounds too into JLR, and all of that will now be spent on clarifying the Land Rover name debacle. So, unfortunately,
new signage all around.
Yeah, no development dollars there. But with any luck, your Land Rover dealer may have already sold you the sign, not realizing that it was too late. So. Hopefully you scurried up there and unbolted it from the building overnight before they called it back. So
we'll see what happens. But as of right now, they're claiming we are not losing the Land Rover name. It is an important part of our DNA. But if it was that critical, why would you
start it at all? I mean, why even start this conversation?
Yeah,
I don't know.
So I don't know. I'm sure there's some finger pointing and various hand wringing going on at JLR right now over this whole thing. But I think people are still confused. As of 6 hours ago, Autoblog had another article about how the Land Rover nameplate was being dropped. So people are still spreading that around.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of discussions on social media, forums, et cetera, various people.
There was a 26, 27 email long thread with the folks putting Anarch together about it. That's actually how I found out about it, is Bob Steele emailed the article to everybody. And then everyone that I've ever met that knows I like Land Rover sent me that same artitle. So yeah, that's good.
That thing you like, it's now gone.
Look at this. What does this mean for your things that you like? You have to give them all back. Like, no, not really. That's all right. Again, how do AMC Gremlin owners feel, or Rover cars for that matter? There's, hey, it might happen one day, but it looks like maybe not today. It's just tough to say. Anyways, speaking of unnecessary changes that probably didn't need to be made, the Outbound Edition Defender 130. I'm not sure why it's outbound and not inbound or anything else, but because I didn't really read the article because I don't really care. But the Outbound Defender looks to be the most murdered out version, straight from the factory, black on black on black on black, and a V8, which I guess you couldn't get a V8. I think you could get a V8 before, but V8.
You know, the V8 is available.
One,
yeah, the V8 is available. This particular one they advertise as being 493 horsepower, and that is roughly 100 horsepower per passenger.
Wow. Yeah, because it seats 5 people. In a 130.
It is a 130 inches. That for reference, that is 2 fewer people than my 88 will seat, and it has a 50-inch shorter wheelbase.
Yeah, and
it's a 120. I keep forgetting it's a 120. So it's
120. Yeah,
it's only 32 inches. It's a yard longer in wheelbase.
The odd thing is I believe one of those seats is actually that weird front middle seat. I think it's the jump seat.
Oh, really? The fifth seat is the middle?
It's the middle, the front middle seats.
I'll be damned.
I don't think so, but that would make sense. I think if I had the option of middle, front, or rear, I think I'd go with front because that thing is unusable. I actually had an opportunity. A friend has a Defender, Defender that has that silly middle seat in it, and had it at the Queen's English car show this past weekend. Mm-hmm. And it's ridiculous. I mean, it is so unusable. It's crazy.
So that's the feature that's like been carried over from the original models, like the best.
Exactly. Yeah, it's totally. And you would never ever sit in the middle seat of any Land Rover ever, unless maybe you're a 5-year or 6-year-old or something. You throw them in there, you'd be all right. But yeah, a full-grown human being, especially like I wish Chris was there because the 3 of us abreast in the front of that car would be a lot of fun.
It's got to be 3 in the middle row and 2 in the front, right? Got to be.
I think it is. It probably is, but maybe not. You never know. But those rear seats must be like crazy nice. Then are they like all the way in the trunk or something? Like, or they just don't have the extra row? It's just cargo space.
The extra row. That's for your gear.
So is this meant to be outbound on adventures? Is that what they're saying?
I think that's the thing that they're trying to convey. It says luxurious space, and then it also says practical space, and then it also says flexible space. So it's like
all the spaces.
Practo-Lux space.
The Practo-Lux space. It's great. I don't know. Yet another variant of the new Defender. It's nice. It's nice to see. I am looking for a special vehicles off-road edition one, like a real proper. The closest we've ever really got is the Trek. I heard somebody call it the Trek trim level the other day. Like, if you ordered the Trek package, like that's not a package, just to use. It's just a used car.
That's what you have, right?
That's what I have. Yeah,
that's what you have.
It's not a trim level. It's just a used car that I happen to buy from Land Rover.
You are the target market for these special edition Defenders.
I am. I have. It's funny because a few dealerships have reached out saying they have particular special editions, and just to put it out there, I'm not interested. I don't collect special edition new Defenders.
They don't believe all of the things that you've said on the podcast previous to this one that would indicate otherwise. Would you buy a Freelander edition Defender 130?
100%. Whatever that is.
And see you would
whatever that is, I absolutely I would. Absolutely I would. Yeah. We might be actually going to pick up the Freelander this weekend.
Where are you taking it?
Get your hopes up. I don't know. The nearest auto recycling yard, maybe, but no.
They're gonna charge you to get rid of it.
Absolutely. They're gonna be like, you can't leave that here.
You're gonna have to remove all the plastic from this vehicle.
We gotta go find one of those pet cemeteries. Bury it there.
Oh,
maybe
it's coming back.
Useful.
It's coming back. So what's the status of the freeloader?
Well, at this point, I believe that now the cooling system is not working properly. It is shifting and it is driving and it is all of that is working now. But now for some inexplicable reason, it is overheating. It wasn't doing that before, but apparently it is just full of radiator stop leaks. So probably just going to throw a new radiator, new set of fans in it.
So I have heard that the Freelander sold in North America in that vintage has head gasket problems.
Yes, these head gaskets have been replaced now. So now it's just a matter of...
So has it been run since the head gaskets have been replaced?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, a little bit.
It leaks?
Possibly. Yeah. Well, we're going to see.
A whole new radiator?
A whole new radiator, maybe a whole new engine, new transmission, new axles. The radiator's pretty cheap, actually. All things considered. The fans are pretty cheap, all things considered. So we're just going to keep going. We're just going to keep throwing money at it until one day...
Fully restored Freelander, the only one in the whole world.
No one wants. Yeah, exactly. The least it will still be worth the same amount that I paid for it without any of those things added to it.
You might be right. You might be right.
Yeah, I think I am.
But at least you're holding on to that level, which is what, How much was it?
Like $500.
The most expensive $500 car ever.
That's exactly right. Yep, that's exactly right. Speaking of which, what's going on up there in the old Pangolin 4x4 shop? These getting back to work now after being in Australia for what seemed like 2 months.
We delivered 4 cars last week. So the 4 cars left the shop in a completed fashion. So I was pretty happy about that. That's a good feeling. And then we have 4 more that are on the cusp. They're on the 1 yard line. So we're producing work, which is hard to do when you're in Australia, but it's good. The guys have been working on the several of the trucks. We got an 80-inch that came into the shop last week. And it has an interesting history. It's a 52, which they didn't sell very many of in the US, like 18,
not at all.
like very few. And so that's an unusual car. And it was owned by this guy. I've got some great vintage pictures of it, who restored it in the 70s, which is kind of a long time ago, for a Land Rover restoration. And he rebuilt the engine and he painted it white. And he drove it down to South America and he lived in it for like 4 years.
In an 80-inch?
In an 80-inch, yeah. Pretty crazy. That's
pretty great. Yeah, wow.
Yeah, he looked like the dude in the photos, from Big Lebowski.
Oh, yeah.
He looks like Jeffrey Lebowski.
That's awesome.
And he's got like a little cardigan on and flip flops. It's pretty great. It's pretty great. So that's a great car. And it at one time it had horns that played cucaracha fitted to the Land Rover. So it's a pretty cool car and it's got a neat history. And that car came into the shop for a little bit of service work. And then we've got another 80-inch, which is showing up right now while I'm doing this podcast. It's arriving from Texas. It's a 51. Ooh. And it probably has a litany of problems that all need, addressed. I'm just guessing, but every Series 1 seems to need a wiring harness, an engine rebuild, a steering box, the normal things that an old car needs. It needs all that. Yes. So I'm sure. But it's a cool car. It's a pretty nice condition generally, pretty complete, mostly original, Yeah. So we have those cars which are coming into the shop, some 80 inches. And then we've been making some progress on one of the shop vehicles, which is we've called it the saw truck, which was, I think we've discussed it a little bit. It's a power saw demonstrator vehicle for IEL chainsaws from the 50s. We kind of dated the time period which it was used because it has water transfer decals, like pretty big ones, like probably a foot and a half long, of chainsaws on the doors. And that particular model of chainsaw was made from like 1955 to like 1960. So that probably was its original use, was the power saw contractors of LePage Limited.
Yeah, LePage. Are you going to get a saw of that era to go with the car?
I think that would be a great idea. That would be pretty cool to have with the car. It has a lot of like chainsaw decals and that sort of thing all over it. Yeah. And on the one side, it has a decal for Logan Mayhew Limited, which is a company that sold logging equipment and was a big dealer of Land Rovers in Vancouver in the 50s. And at one time, they advertised themselves as being Canada's largest Land Rover dealer. And so they must have sold a number of cars there. I don't know whether that's true or not, but one thing that they did was they put a really elaborate cast aluminum plaque on the back of the cars that they sold that said, this vehicle sold and serviced by Logan Mayhew Limited. So I've seen a couple cars with that plaque. And this car, which is a 107 station wagon, first year production, 1956, that vehicle, it had the sticker on the side, and I thought, well, man, I wonder, it doesn't have the plaque, And I looked carefully, and kind of where the license plate had been moved to, and a non-original license plate light, and there are a few extra holes there on the left-hand side. In amongst those was a rectangular hole pattern, and I didn't have one of these plaques. They're pretty unusual nowadays. Yeah, and I was like, that sure looks like the size of those plaques, those emblems. Yeah. And so we tracked one down. I found a picture of one online, and I messaged the guy that posted the picture, and he's like, oh, that's not my picture and it's not my plaque. But I got the picture from this guy. And so I messaged that guy, and that guy was like, oh, it's my picture, but it's not my plaque. I took it from this guy. And so I messaged that guy, and that guy was Ray Wood of Romer Drive.
Oh, and that guy was like, where'd you get this number?
I know. I explained it to him. I was like, we got this really cool 107 wagon in here. Yeah. I'm pretty sure it had one of these plaques on it.
Yeah.
I sent him pictures of the decal on the side and the whole pattern. And I was like, I understand that you have one. Is it at all possible that you would sell us this plaque to kind of reunite the truck with the plaque, because it's a part of its history. We like that.
Cool.
So he was like, yeah, I'll give it to you. So we were ordering a batch of Roamer drives. And so he threw it in with the batch, and that was super nice of him. And so we got it the other day, and we took it out of its little crate, and we held it up to the car. And sure enough, it fit perfectly. It fit perfectly on the truck. So it was kind of cool to put those pieces back together. We really like doing that.
Oh,
yeah, kind of neat.
Cool.
Kind of neat. So little research, little legwork, and you get that kind of special car.
Yeah, you kind of get everything to this.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's really neat. That's such a cool car. Well, you basically have to get the chainsaw. I mean, there's sort of no way out of it.
Morally and legally obligated to find an antique chainsaw that is pictured on the side of this Land Rover.
Absolutely, you have to do it. I mean, it's going to already be in similar vintage, so you're like ready to go.
I do have a really cool chainsaw grill badge that's going to go on this car. And we just got the axles spruced up. We just got the brakes spruced up. We just got the seats spruced up. So it's going to be all rough and ready, rugged on the outside, but it's going to have a reliable drivetrain and new tires and all that sort of thing. So it's going to have this crusty old look to it. The other thing that we noticed when we were looking at pictures of the car has a very unique 3-bolt pattern on the front bumper. And usually when you think about winches, you think of sort of a symmetrical pattern, in terms of how they're mounted. But since the crank hole on the Land Rover is a little bit offset, the hand starter crank, a little offset. So I was like, oh, I bet that's a crank drive Koenig. And we had supplied a crank drive Koenig and reproduced the Series 1 mount for it for the Oxford car, the Oxford and Cambridge expedition vehicle from 1955. That car had a Koenig crank drive on it, and it was missing. So during the course of recommissioning that car, Adam Bennett, the owner of that car, reached out and he said, hey, is that something that you have? And so we created that for him. And I was like, oh yeah, that's what that 3-bolt pattern is. So we rounded up a Koenig crank drive to go on this car too. So it'll have its original winch, have its original dealer plaques. It'll have some really cool, neat stuff. It'll be a neat car.
That's going to be a super cool car. And it's a part of Canadian history, so Dixon has to buy it.
We also have a great video of Linus sitting in the cab of the saw truck making motor noises and pretending as if he's driving it, which we'll post on social media against his
for
wishes.
Sure. We wouldn't have it any other way.
And speaking of Linus, we all went to Cooma in Australia for the 75th anniversary. And so we'll have an episode coming up here soon that'll have our Australia adventure, driving over the snowy mountains in Series 1s with Bob Ives of Camel Trophy fame, Nick Dimbleby, world's best photographer, Michael Bishop, world's best Land Rover salesman.
Today's Roger Craythorne.
And Alex Massey, world's best 80-inch expert. At any rate, we had a good time, and we have lots to talk about in a future episode.
Everybody's favorite bibbed pants wearing individual. We're going to get him on here in the next week or two. We have the most packed schedule of things that we have maybe ever had in Underpowered Hour history. Holy moly.
Liza's G4 adventure?
They're not even back yet. They're still on the road. They'll be back in a half an hour from the massive G4 adventure. So we're going to have her and Abigail and Steve Cooper on the show at some point very soon to talk about that. They saw incredible, crazy things. They went to that place where the guy got his arm crushed with the boulder and got stuck there and to cut his own arm off. And the boulder apparently is still there. I asked them, apparently the arm isn't, but the boulder is. The boulder, I would have put a rubber arm in there just to make the tourism more, it's more worth it, right? If there's a,
you're the guy that would stick your arm under the rock and be like, help!
Exactly.
It happened again.
Where nobody's here? Oh, no. Everybody just left. There were lots of people, but they all left.
That's a movie that I didn't see. I didn't see that movie where the guy gets his arm stuck under the rock and then he chews it off. And I didn't watch that.
You don't watch it. It's too close to home.
Isn't that James Franco? Is that James Franco?
Oh yeah, it's James Franco. Yeah,
he's on my boycott list.
Yeah, the older one. Yeah, you're not going to do that. It's a good tips. If I feel like if anybody I know is going to get caught in that situation, it may be you. It feels like you should watch it just in case,
just to avoid getting your arm caught under a boulder.
It's a cautionary tale. Speaking of a cautionary tale, over here at the old Barris collection, we have been motorcycle crazy. Actually, we took on the Land Rover front, we had Ted out at the Queen's English Car Show.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. How did that go?
It went super well. To do that, we decided that we would do just a super light skim polish on good old Ted to get a little bit of the oxides and everything off. And man, for original paint on a car that old, it just looks amazing. I mean, it's just
really a good one. It's really a good one.
It is.
This is the first show you've taken it to, right?
It is the first show that I've taken it to. That's correct.
Did you get some good feedback from people visiting?
I got some great. So funny enough, so Cooper and I are zooming down the freeway because, of course, Ted is no problem freeway speed.
Does pretty good.
We turned off the freeway to go into Woodley Park, which is where the Queen's English Car Show takes place every year. It's just like a cute little sort of little park that's not that far from Van Nuys and the Van Nuys Airport and stuff. So we're getting off of the 405 freeway, which is pretty fun to see a 60s Land Rover on the 405. And we turn the corner to see a red 109 Land Rover that is broken down. And as we drive by, we realize it's not just any broken down 109 Land Rover. It is another NADA 6-cylinder Land Rover.
Another one.
And our very very good friend Barry Fine is there with the bottom hose of his radiator popped off and all of his coolant underneath the car. It just so happened that I had another bottle of coolant with me in my car.
Did you take some pictures of him, some compromising photos?
We did. We took some compromising photos of him under the car, around the car. And anyways, we got him. He got going again and met us at the, we gave him some coolant and then quickly abandoned him because, he had apparently just the tools that came with the car. But all my tools were on the G4 rally with Liza. No. So I also only had the tools that came with the car.
So did you have any issues with Ted though?
Oh no, not a single issue. No, Ted was ticking like a clock. Once we got that distributor thing worked out, I have to say, it is like the most reliable Land Rover that I have.
It's a good one.
It is a good one. It is a good one. Super fun. People couldn't get enough of it. There was a gentleman that talked to me for no less than 45 minutes about how much the intake looks like an exhaust and all kinds of stuff. He actually said, this is quite a knowledgeable dude, that actually is pretty common in like tractors and farm equipment. That style of muffler-looking intake is actually pretty common on excavators and things. So
I've had a number of tractors, but none of them have had that particular style of intake. Yeah. But I could see that having a paper filter element inside a canister like that being common.
Yeah,
like my Bobcat has something that's round.
Yeah, kind of. They're usually round though. Yeah, but this one is sort
usually
of
round.
It really looks like a muffler. And then Barry showed up and posted up next to me, so we had the two cars. We had the two cars next to each other, which is
done a lot of work
cool.
to that car. Yeah,
it's in pretty good shape.
It's a cool one. It's cool. It's got a neat history to it. Speaking of neat history and 6 cylinders, we met a guy in Australia, Malcolm Chaplin.
Right,
and Malcolm is a pretty interesting dude. He was an engineer for the Land Rover company. And hopefully we can get him on the show. He's he's awesome. In Australia, so there's a little bit of a time issue there. Yeah. And then he doesn't have any email or phone or any of that. His wife handles all that. But he's an interesting guy, and I do have his contact information. And he was an engineer when the 6-cylinder went into production, and he worked on the NADA 6-cylinder project, and he worked on some really, really neat, fascinating projects. And he told me some things about the 6-cylinder, which I didn't previously know. And the gist of it is they used the 6-cylinder because they couldn't get enough 4-cylinder. As what he told me. He's like, we couldn't make enough 2 1/4. So we already had an engine line going for the Rover cars. And we were like, we can use the excess capacity of that to produce 6-cylinder engines, which we can put in Land Rovers. So they engineered the Land Rover and the bulkhead. And if you've ever looked at a Land Rover bulkhead, it looks kind of like they did the bulkhead to fit that engine, but they had already designed it for a 4-cylinder car.
For a 4-cylinder engine. Yeah,
You're
exactly.
Like, we just cut it here and here.
Well, and if you look at the amount of power that you'd gain for that extra displacement, doesn't really seem worth it,
Not
know?
Much.
And
Not much.
Especially once you consider the weight of that engine over the 2 1/4, that it might be a wash.
But it is a smooth running engine, and
it is very smooth. Yeah,
the Nada one does make more power at higher RPMs, as you can attest, because it does roll down the highway pretty well.
It goes great, and the thing is like, I don't really go much over 60 in it, but it'll go 75 miles an hour if you wanted to. But no, it's just, it cruises. I've driven it thousands of miles, and it's actually, honestly, save maybe the 200 TDI, which is my only other sort of classic Land Rover engine that's fun on the freeway. It's great. I prefer it over the Stage 1, over the V8 that's in the Stage 1 in the Range Rover. Smooth. It's a smoother engine than that. Yeah. The V8 makes more power. It'll go faster, but it is certainly a nicer. It's a nicer drive with a 6-cylinder. I love it. Yeah. So it's absolutely one of my favorite cars. So so that was great. Did that. Lots of cool cars there. Lots of good friends. Becca was there, and Abel was there with a car with no fenders on it, no front fenders at all, just driving around without front fenders on it, which is an interesting look. Pickup truck. A few good friends there. A gentleman with his, I forget his name, French gentleman with his Range Rover Sport that he has a seat affixed to the front bumper. We got an opportunity to sit in it, so I'll post a picture up to the Underpowered Hour feed. It's for sale, actually. $20,000 is all he wants for it, and so you two could ride down the 405. Is the seat on the bumper? Yeah. It's pretty fun. I don't know exactly where you would use it. I mean, it's really meant for like a 4Gunner if you're on a safari and you need to protect yourself from lions or something.
Post-apocalyptic road rage.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool car. But yeah, lots of great series cars, lots of newer cars, some beautiful old Range Rovers.
Becca was there with her wagon.
She sure was, as always. So we sat and chatted for a little while, and it's always great to see her, and great to see all the other British cars. There were some great minis. Our good friend Michael had his double-decker bus there, amongst God knows how many other cars, I'm sure, strewn about the property, but lots of cool minis, lots of other stuff. Unfortunately, Chris had another engagement, so he couldn't bring his mini down, which is too bad. But
that's a shame.
That is a shame. But it's a really cool event. And then the rest of the week here has been all about motorcycles. So finally, after
tell me about this.
Being on order for 2 full years, almost to the day. I think it's just a little over 2 full years. My Honda CT 125 Trail finally came in. Inspired by Ike's little monkey bike, I also wanted a scooter motorcycle, and so I've been in love with the CT bikes, the CT50, CT90, CT110s, all the sort of Japanese delivery bikes, and the trail version is kind of like a sort of dirt bikey version of a Japanese delivery bike. And so we got a 125 or red, which is the only color you can get, and also the only color you would want. They do make a tan one in Japan, but I like the red. The red's a very classic delivery bike. So we've got some big plans for that bike. I think we're going to turn it into an off-road noodle delivery service bike. We'll build a big box for the
Freelander
back of it.
tow vehicle.
Freelander tow vehicle. For sure we could do that. And so we're gonna get working on that project here. Pretty soon. We're gonna put We're gonna Dakar it out, get some twin headlights, and put a big dirt bike fender, big knobby tires on it, and a bunch of stupid things on a bike that can only go 50 miles an hour. So
that sounds awesome.
Pretty good. Yeah, it's gonna be pretty good. Managed to wheelie it, but it doesn't wheelie well. It doesn't have a lot of power, so it.
Just got to give it a lot of help.
You can give it. Yeah, you can give it. You give it a lot of help, and it sets down pretty quick. But you could do it. Anything will wheelie. Speaking of anything will wheelie, so my stupid little Coleman pit bike was the next project last weekend, and it had sat for a while, and the carburetor was kind of clogged up and wouldn't really start or run, very well. So instead of just cleaning the carburetor, I thought, why not replace it with a performance racing carburetor and a free flow exhaust system? So a bike that used to go like maybe 25, 30 miles an hour now goes like well over 70.
Whoa.
And I'm pretty sure if you went to full throttle, it would tear itself apart.
Now for you, those of you that aren't familiar, Coleman is the same company that makes lanterns and like thermoses and tents and all these sorts of things. They're like a classic American camping gear company. And like a few years ago, there was like a mini bike craze and there were all these imported mini bikes. And so Coleman decided to put their name on one. And there's a few events where the Coleman mini bike is like the vehicle of choice. I think there's a Gambler 500 mini bike event. And
there's a class for it.
And so this is basically like a thermos with a motor and wheels.
It really is. And I mean, it is the same tubes they use to like put those like pop-up awnings together.
70 miles an hour. That's insane.
I would say that was as fast as I was willing to bring it up to, but there were cars. going alongside of me that I was passing. And of course, it's not street legal, so you're really not supposed to do that. But it is a terrifying little motorbike now, but really fun. Super
so
fun.
This may be the last podcast that you would use. Is that what you're saying?
Could be. It's sitting outside still. I've got to have to ride it around a couple times before I put it away tonight, just for good measure. Yeah, no, it's a pretty stupid little motorcycle, and I think the plan for that one is we're going to do it up like the Korean War. There were motorcycles that the MASH units used and in fact there was a MASH episode where Honeycutt gets one of those bikes and paints it yellow. It's in the Peterson Museum. That's a super famous. Those were Indian motorcycles, but it was a really famous movie bike. This Indian motorcycle from the Korean War that was used during the filming of MASH, and it was sort of hand painted yellow. So we're going to do kind of an homage to somewhere between a MASH Jeep and a MASH thing. It seems,
and you're going to dress as Klinger while you're riding it, right?
Absolutely, 100%. And it seems appropriate to dress it up as a medical bike because it's probably you're going to need medical attention immediately. After
it's
riding
not what
it,
you want to see if you have a medical emergency.
No,
a cross-dresser on a mini bike going 70 miles an hour.
And it doesn't stop. There is those brakes are meant for 25 miles an hour, so it is like you got to have a good runway to stop. Or you can kind of kick the tail out a little bit and hockey stop like a dirt bike a little bit. So I'm sort of working on that a little bit. Without my motorcycle boots, I was worried my shoe would get pulled off. But anyways, pretty fun. Pretty fun little bike.
The mini bike doesn't get you
times.
the forklift will.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, we have to sell the forklift.
What? This is a tremendous update that I wasn't familiar with.
I think the Widowmaker has lifted its last load. They're going
to make you get rid of it, huh?
It's stuck. No, it just so happens that I managed to argue my way out of having to get rid of it by the HOA, only to have it essentially fail, unfortunately. So it is stuck now in low gear. It will not shift into any gear but low gear. It's of course a manual transmission, so there's a clutch, and it won't clutch out of low gear now. So you can go forward and back, kind of. And now the main lift piston, I think one of the seals is gone, and it now squirts a little hydraulic fluid every time it lifts or lowers, and it's just not. It's not worth it. It's not worth fixing it.
I like how you say that's not worth it, despite it being way, way more useful than the Freelander. You're like, I'm not going to repair that thing that has been steadfastly reliable for the last 70 years.
It's true. It has been. Well, no, I'm going to sell it to somebody who I'm sure will take the time to completely restore it and keep using it. We're going to switch over to a little electric kind of pallet style one, so that we can use it as kind of a man lift and a forklift, because that's what we actually need. So just as I defeated the HOA, I was defeated by my lack of maintenance.
Don't worry, there'll be another opportunity to get in an argument with the HOA.
Sure, just wait until I get.
How do you have an HOA for a commercial building?
I have no idea. I don't know how it doesn't make any sense.
You signed a document that
a weird condo board. I definitely did. I didn't realize that was in there. But speaking of documents you didn't think you signed, it's World Land Rover Day on April 30th, which for us is in the future. But as you listen to this show, it was yesterday.
Yes.
So hopefully
be sure to have celebrated it.
You should be sure to have celebrated it. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we celebrated it in so many fabulous ways, just out there Land Rovering in the, on the day.
I'm going to drive 2 Land Rovers on World Land Rover Day.
At the same time. Same time. Yeah. It's going to be great. Like Jean-Claude Van Damme between those 2 trucks. Just 2 80 inches, just steering them both at the same time. Put them both in low range. You could probably manage. I mean, maybe tie a sweater around one steering wheel. I think you probably.
Are we going to do a Nando's review? Do we have time for that?
Yeah, we may have time for an end. Oh, you know what? Actually, I don't think we do, because I forgot to mention that episode 2 of the hard-hitting, I'm sure award-winning, 2-part crossover episode with our friends at the Center Steer podcast is out now.
Oh, shoot.
If you haven't listened to it, go listen to it right now. You're actually listening to this out of order. There may be spoilers in this episode if you haven't watched the previous one.
You're going to learn all about the Anarch event.
If you're listening to this show in canonical order, it's out of phase. You got to go listen to that show. Yeah, it's terrible. But at any rate, head on over there. John's done a great job. I'm sure I haven't listened to it yet because this is in the past, but that'll be in the future. But I'm sure it'll be exceptional, talking all about all the podcast stuff, which is like the most important part of Anarch. All the stuff that we're going to get up to, the insane, stupid things that we're going to get up to. Let's just say, if there is a special underpowered hour convoy going out there, may just throw in a mini bike or two. You never know. We'll see.
That'd be cool.
I have to see. We'll jump over something in the mini bike. But at any rate, that's all the time we have for this week. So I apologize. We'll make sure that in next week's episode, we're really going to make a commitment this year to making sure we fit that Nando's review.
It's going to happen.
I know people are interested. Nando's is, of course, now the full sponsor of the G4 Freelander, the undisputed king of Land Rovers. So we sort of owe it to them at this point. I think
it's the Peri Peri challenge now.
Well, we've actually tried to cool the G4 Freelander with Peri Peri sauce. It wasn't actually engine stop leak. It's Peronaise, just run on pure Peronaise. Yeah. You think it was oil and coolant that got mixed together, but no. It starts like that. That's
I got no fewer than 4 requests for Nando's review while I was in Australia. It did happen. That is the God's honest truth.
Several of them were in a Nando's, so it was just from the staff of the Nando's just asking, when is this going to happen? Well, it's sure, we'll get right on that. And at that, Ike, it's been a slice. We'll talk to you next week. Enjoy World Land Rover Day, or have enjoyed World Land Rover Day.
All right, man. Take care. See you then.
The Underpowered Hour is produced by Liza Barris, Ike Goss, and me, Steve Barris. Pavel Svardov composed and performed our theme music. Consider supporting the show on Patreon, and if you already do, thank you. Your support makes the show possible. For even more, check out our Instagram or Facebook.